and welcome to a special edition of Evolve. This is going to be, well, actually it's a topic we've talked about in our list of these are all the different ways that relationships exist in our lives, and this was one of them.
Having a relationship with animals, or specifically with pets.
With your pets, yes. So this is a special edition because we had to say goodbye to our special pet of almost 20 years this past weekend. It was a little bit of a rough weekend in that sense. But before we dive into the relationship, I just wanted to read this little love letter. It says, "Letter to my family," and this is written by Dr. Vanny McVetti, who's the founder of the organization we used with our cat when we put her down. So she's the founder of Lap of Love Veterinary Hospice. But this is just a cute, very touching little letter that she wrote. So I want to read this. It says, "My dear family, today I'm as I was meant to be, young, energetic, full of life, and able to explore everything around me. My legs work perfectly. There is no more pain, and I can run, jump, and play with all of my friends. Most of all, there is no regret, no aging, and no confusion. I ask that you don't grieve for the loss of what we shared, but rejoice in the fact that we lived and loved each other with unconditional adoration. Excuse me. One touch or kiss from you, one pat on the head, one favorite treat was all that was needed for a lifetime of unwavering commitment from me to love you and cherish you until my time had come. I am grateful and thankful that our lives merged and we were able to share such special moments together. I will wait for your arrival as we are always meant to be together. Please do not hold on to the love that you shared with me, but share it with another so that I may live on forever in your heart. And remember, to have loved and lost is better than never to have loved at all. With unconditional love, your angel." Now, it's just a really sweet, and this whole booklet is full of, it's called Eternal Paw Prints. It's a little memory book that they gave us. It's full of, oh my goodness, poems and letters and just stuff that was written, and even like this, like how the pet lover's code, like you have the right to grieve the death of a pet, you have the right to talk about your grief, you have the right to feel a variety of emotions, you have the right to experience grief bursts. I like that. You have the right to be tolerant of your physical and emotional limits.
And that's funny that you bring that up, because many people out there might not think that this is a problem. Why would you not have the right to grieve?
Oh, but right, yeah.
I come from a generation where, well, from a teaching and in biblical sense, that they don't have a spirit. They're not going to go to heaven. I mean, just stuff like that.
That you'll never see them again.
Yeah. And so if, or it's just a dog, it's just an animal, it's just a cat.
Well, and that's what we want to get to. Don't get too ahead of us of how has our belief and the way we act evolved over time, and just how did this weekend impact us, and what are we doing to evolve through, even evolving through grief, and how are we handling grief now versus how were we maybe instructed to before. But the rest of this, just the pet lover's code says you have the right to make use of ritual, you have the right to embrace your spirituality, you have the right to search for meaning, you have the right to treasure your memories, and you have the right to move toward your grief and to heal. And I think grief in general, we tend to only think of it with a death, but there is many forms of grief. Like you can grieve, the fact that, maybe you lost a relationship. And in this case, we did lose a relationship, but I'm saying more like, in any form, you could have, maybe lost a relationship, or maybe missed out on a promotion, or grieving maybe like your childhood and what you didn't get to have, or the parent or the mom, the dad, the relationship you wished you would have had. Like sometimes we just have to grieve those things. So today, talking about our little pet, our kitty girl that we put down, probably was one of the hardest decisions I feel like I've ever had to make. But using Lap of Love, this organization that is like a veterinary hospice, is how it's defined, was like the pivotal change that made it from painful to peaceful.
They were absolutely great. They made a unpleasant situation
much more pleasant.
Less unpleasant.
Yeah. It was still really difficult because you're talking almost 20 years with the same pet, and it was a love-hate relationship. So let's dive into the relationship part of our life with our pet. And
well, what do you want to start with from the beginning?
In the beginning was the cat. No, I would say
got this cat because Joshua wanted a cat.
Our son was 2.
Yeah.
But I think actually the reason we had got her was because at the time I think we had just lost the Dobermans that we had.
Right.
I think that they had just
Toby ran away.
Like, well,
Ginger,
you let him out to go to the bathroom one night, and then we never found our Doberman again.
Yeah.
Like after that, so I think our son was just a little bit sad, and I think somehow some friends heard about it, and they're like, "Hey, our cat just accidentally got pregnant. You know, a feral cat by a feral cat. We have a bunch of kittens. Do you want one?" We went over to their house. I don't know where you were at. Like if you were thinking, "Oh God, we got to get a cat," or I've always loved all animals, and
well, so and I guess is what. There's a big change in my perspective of animals because, like Toby, I really cared about Toby.
That was, Toby 1 or Toby 2?
Toby,
like, we've had 2 dogs named Toby.
Toby 2.
Oh, okay, okay.
But him, and I compared mentally a while back, well, a couple hours ago, I guess.
Wow, so far back.
Well, it just was recently that we did the cat thing. So I compared the loss of Toby to the loss of Coral, and it's dramatically insanely different. And it's because of my perspective of animals for sure.
Okay.
Because even at the time I grieved Toby, missing him. We did everything we could to find him. We went to the several
called vets, we called animal shelters.
Yeah, and he just I think someone picked him up.
He was a good boy.
And so regardless, the comparison was night and day. Mm-hmm. And getting this cat, I couldn't stand cats at the time.
My family's my paternal side was very anti-cat, but my maternal side of my family was pro.
And that's cats. That's all programming because
sure.
My parents didn't like cats.
Right,
so
my father hated cats.
We couldn't. I thought I was being like I was being whatever by proclaiming I hate cats. Well, I found out that it did not hate cats, especially this cat. So it immediately took a liking to me, and I think we said in an episode earlier, that like the first night we got her home, she's like a baby kitten, and she slept with us, and she slept on my chest most of the night.
And I thought she was dead because I thought maybe you rolled over on her, and because in the middle of the night, just like an infant. I mean, I had, obviously had an infant at this point, and Joshua was now 2. Our son was 2, and been through that, being careful don't have the dad roll, or either of you roll over on the baby. And I thought, oh my God, he's rolled over on the kitten, because I picked her up and she was just limp and hung in my hand. I was like, oh, she's dead. Well, the first night and she's dead. And it was really just that she was so relaxed that she was out. But then the very first time she got out of the house and you thought maybe escaped is the first time I saw you emotionally attached to something.
Yeah. We don't need to share that story. But anyway,
yeah,
I've shared it way too much
she,
in my life.
She got out, and of course he's like, come back. And he got her. That was still in her infancy stage. And then I feel like she was a very decent cat for a female until we got her fixed. And I think that might have been a tragic situation for her. Yeah. I just felt heartbroken when I brought her home. She was such a mess, and it was... At the time, financially, we weren't in the best place, so we picked this really cheap, or it was free.
It was the.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I just regret it all so much now.
Or something. I think.
Yeah, and it's just I don't know. It's all one and done in a day. You go pick them up in a few hours, and so of course you get them back, and they're still drugged, and she's just horrible, and she's crying, and I just regret so much of that. What we chose to do out of cheapness, thinking we were saving ourselves money, when I think maybe we created more grief. And from there forward, I feel like she just had such I don't want to say bitter.
She wasn't a very, very friendly cat, that's for sure.
Never really friendly. I mean, and that's where sometimes this relationship with her was a love-hate in a sense, where driving us crazy sometimes. And then I will say this, though, about her. She started maybe around her first heat, and then after we got her fixed and stuff like that, that when someone would be really crying, she would come from downstairs or outside once she started being an outside cat after being fixed, and come in and sit beside whoever was the crier, especially the boy, and just not necessarily let you pet her and hug her, not that, but she would just lay by the sad person. So she was a presence, and that was the way she nurtured. And I think, even pets and people can be very much the same of how we respond to people's grief or different traumas. Not everybody's going to be dramatic.
Yeah.
And this one wasn't, for sure.
What, her life?
She wasn't dramatic in the sense of like demonstrative of being like, I'm here and I love you. Like you, I don't know. Like sometimes towards the last, few years here, we were just like, oh, I think she hates us because she just seems so annoyed. Just look in her eyes and stuff. She'd be like, oh God. But I think just how we've evolved and grown is partly of what you said. We did feel or chose to believe, I don't know how to explain it, but like that when we read the book in the Bible of like Genesis and what things were made and how Adam named all the animals and he had like supreme authority over everything that was created. So I think we kind of adopted or absorbed the belief that humans are the highest being on the planet.
That everything is submitted to us.
Yeah,
and that's how that had worked. And so, going back to Coral's relationship with her, she was like a nice bitch.
Okay.
I mean, she was the cat boss of the neighborhood for one. She could scrap her and hold her own. As little as a little
she was always really tiny.
A little runt she was.
Even if we tried to fatten her, she just didn't.
So.
But I'm saying, like, going from that mindset I said a second ago of, like, humans are all supreme and everything must, we have authority over the trees, the plants, the animals. And in the last, 5 years, what would you say? Just years. Kind of evolving slowly, not all at one time, but slowly just understanding our oneness with all life form. Right. I mean, from the trees, the grass, the animals, our pets, of just realizing, I'm not better than them.
I am them.
We are all
we're connected
to connect, and we're all equally important. And I think when we started having that mindset and just kind of being like, okay, this is really important that we return to this oneness that I think maybe hundreds of years ago, the Native Americans and other tribes and other places, they respected the earth and all the animals to the point I have talked to and listened to many different people in the Native American community of just when they would kill an animal, they would even say thank you for your life and breathe its spirit in and stuff, and just such a reverence for even what they were killed to eat.
Right. And
I don't know that we've come very far from that. We've definitely
we have come from a place some generations of kids, or this generation of kids, probably has no idea a steak equals a cow.
Yeah, it's from the grocery.
Hamburger at McDonald's.
Some people are trying to make sure they get their kids that connection again, which kudos.
And so, I grew up, my grandfather was a butcher, and so I walked in on cows hanging on racks and sawdust on the floor.
Did you have grief about it? Or are you just oh, that's just food?
No, I didn't see actually, at that time in my life, I didn't know that was the cow, either.
Oh, because it was meat on the body's, just meat on a stick.
Meat on a hook. Huge meat on a hook.
Yeah.
But, there's livestock, there's animals, so there's all kinds of ideas that I guess we came from.
Well, and again, you mentioned earlier of I didn't like cats because my family didn't like cats, and when you're in a family or in a society or a culture that says this is right, this is wrong, you're just going to absorb that. You're going to adopt that. And
if you're not strong enough to make your own opinion.
Yeah, unless you're a real, forward thinker and you're no, I think that's not wrong, and I do think we can do this. But for the most part, socially, we just keep propagating and pushing on to the next generation our beliefs, and they absorb them. So I would say I became more of a cat person when my parents divorced, and then my mom got us a cat. me and my sister as when she was a single mom. Our first cat was Professor because he was all black and he had like a little white like beard goatee thingy on his chin, and that was probably the first loss, possibly. No, we did have a dog before that too, Juno, that got into rat poison. So I've experienced loss, but never in this way before with an animal, because when you're a kid, usually, I won't say everyone does this, but the kids at school or somewhere else, and the parents are like, oh, Sammy had to be put down. Kids they just know they're no longer here. But like, this is the first time I was in the room with something, a living being that took its final breath. And man, did I like the floodgates.
Yeah.
It was really hard for all of us. Not just because of the time and the attachment, but I think because we knew we had to do this a long time ago. We should have done this a little while ago. And you made a really great statement. Do you want to share that here of like the suffering? And
well, she's been suffering quite a bit. Her back, and to the point where she wasn't even grooming herself. We had to groom her for quite a while to get the knots out of her, and she just was getting old and old.
Yeah, deteriorating.
And we had to absorb that suffering, and
in this decision,
because so that her suffering could stop, and so we absorbed it, and it was hard. It was a very hard choice to make, but once the choice was decided, and ironically, the day that is all going down, she's like in her best mood.
Yeah, she seems so great.
It felt so good.
Who was I just talking to? They were just saying that how like animals just know, and we don't credit them enough for just having so much sensitivity, spiritually, emotionally, physically, their five senses, or even multiple senses. But it's like they know like this is the end, and it's okay. It's almost like their way of saying this is okay. It's okay.
And I think we take for granted. So I mean, I know I can only speak for myself. I have taken for granted for a long, long time that the animal or the tree or whatever, they understand. They, just because you don't speak English or
and I think we've talked about this in other episodes,
especially
like how I've talked to everything, trees, rocks, water, my whole life since being a kid. This is new for you.
We have another animal, Mocha, and she's an Australian Shepherd, and
she's out sleeping.
What a personality. I mean, she grunts when she's upset. Her eyes are like human eyes. I mean, it's just...
There's so much soul in life.
I think for both of these animals, until I started looking and seeing, I did not see that they have their own personality, they have their own way of communicating, and you can communicate with them. They understand you.
Yeah,
they certainly understand you. I mean, to the point where I think Mocha sometimes understands actual words.
Oh, yeah,
we know that there's certain words that you cannot say.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have pets, you can definitely understand and relate as well. And I would say, like, just going back to the day that we had to make this decision and how difficult it was and letting go, I think what's hard for us as humans to let go of is the attachment to things. And when something leaves our life, and I'm not just talking death, but let's say, I mean, we've talked in previous episodes about money and how like our mindsets around money. And I was very much like affronted and offended if even paying a bill, it was like something that I was holding and hoarding and treasuring is now being taken from me. And we have very much strong attachments to material things, to the point that we, like in this situation with our pet, we held on too long because of our own selfish attachments. When we knew she was suffering and we saw that, we need to do this sooner than later. But like we all had to get on that page and we all had to agree that like this is what's best for her. Let's stop being selfish here.
Yeah.
And I think humans just, what we've evolved into negatively is massive consumers. We want so much. I want. I need. And we hoard and we hold and we stamp ownership on everything. I think you even made a comment about this the other day about how like, how does anyone own anything?
I think the biggest, and the animal ultimately belonged to Joshua. So he was the one that actually made
surrendered to the decision.
Surrendered to
Yeah.
the decision.
Yeah.
And he had to come to be comfortable. But my question was, who am I to have a right to any of that? And I think what gave us the right, I guess, we've taken on the caregiving of these animals, because certainly without we
have a lot of domestication that's happened.
The
right, yeah, these aren't
of
wolves
animals,
and cougars in the wild.
They're not going to make it on. A feral cat can make it on its own.
I don't 100% agree that, if you put them in the wild, they couldn't survive.
No, I don't.
I feel like instinct does kick in when our cat became an outdoor cat, like a decade or more ago, like she began hunting things outside, from birds to lizards was her favorite thing.
Yeah.
Where we lived, there was a plethora of those, but, I think that instincts will kick in, but humans domesticate like everything, and we add a ton of attachment and stories. We've talked about this. I think we talked about it in a recent episode. I don't know, the pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Maybe we
need to talk about it,
but just like when you just look at things in an unpleasant, neutral, using only those three feeling tones, it removes a lot of the story that we build around things. And we build stories around our animals, like, oh, I can see she's so upset because she doesn't have her special food, or, oh, she's sad because we were gone too long. And, like, some of those might be facts, like, they do have attachment issues and things like that, but we've humanized animals very much so by domestication and stuff, which I'm not saying
to the point of their survival outside of
they may or may not survive. But I kind of just also feel like instinct for even humans or any living being, we have an instinct to survive, and that means water, shelter, food, and we will find those somehow, some way. So there's a yes and no that's there. But as far as just today, I don't really have a lot to share other than just, wow, grief sucks. But not all grief is attached to a loss of, like, in life or death situations. Sometimes it is other things. But I think having the best support team around you while you're grieving, and it doesn't mean it has to be a slew of people, but we had each other, and like we all took the time and the space to make sure like no one had to work, and who F work, like this is more important.
But work was really good,
our coworkers were just like, oh my gosh, absolutely, and they'd all been through this loss prior,
right? So,
of themselves. So they all, identified, and they knew, like, hey, because you had even said, like, oh, I'm just going to take off the first hour or two when the vet's supposed to come to the house and blah, blah, blah. And he was like,
my boss is like,
I don't think how
buddy.
This is going to go. And it was a few hours, and then you decided, because we did discuss at the beginning, before the vet got to the house, and we're all together with the cat still. And, like, we said, whatever anyone needs. If someone needs space, say you need space. If someone needs hugs, if you need to go to work, what do you need to do to process today? Take your space to do that. And knowing you,
I needed to go to work.
You always have to move and go to work. Or you have two switches. Yeah. Like, it's on or off. Either that or you go to take a nap.
You go to take a nap.
Yeah. And you've done either or in different difficult times. Yeah. You'll shut down or go to work. And did you feel that helped you process your grief through all of this? Like going to work a few hours after the event?
Yeah, it kept my mind focused on not focused, or kept my mind focused on other things besides the loss. Yet I was shocked at how many things actually reminded me of a damn cat,
Yeah.
So
and I chose the opposite. I chose not to go to work, and I chose to stay with our son for the whole day. Like, he just didn't want to be alone. And I also felt really drained. Like, when I'm emotional, I don't think I've cried. I don't think you've cried that hard, like, in your whole life. I hate to say, and you've lost family members, and I don't know if you've cried as hard as that day.
Maybe not. I don't know.
But for me, like, grief has always been something that's harder for me to express, to share, and also to allow other people to have, because my coping mechanism has always been, oh, don't feel sad, let me help you feel better. I want you to feel better. I want you to be happy. I want to whatever. So I think that was a big breakthrough for me, or like another layer of addressing grief and allowing grief and helping people just sit with their grief, as including myself. That was a good evolution for me this weekend. That
Have you mentioned the company that actually?
did we say Lap of Love? Yeah, I think we did. Yeah,
I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Alexa, because she was absolutely wonderful. I mean,
yeah.
and if you ever have to go, anybody has to go through this, I highly recommend.
This is our rec for today. We don't have a book. Though I will
Lap
say,
of Love, their company is, I mean,
and
they
it's all over
helped us.
the United States,
Yeah,
so there
it's not
is
just
access
something-
to them.
But they came to our house, or came to Joshua's house, and this whole the compassion and the attention to detail was amazing, just
Yeah.
absolutely amazing.
And so sensitive and tender.
Very, very
like I think
sensitive
maybe
to
we
everything.
thought that, they're gonna have a vet come here and they're gonna just be like, okay, this is what we're doing. Let me give her the shot. Let me do this. But this person was just so like as if this was her cat. She wasn't crying like we were. And I even asked her, like, I'm like sobbing. I'm like, how do you do this all day and go into people's homes with them sobbing? And she said, I loved how she answered, because she's like, it's not just the grief. I get to see how much everyone loved. And I had an acquaintance who texted me later that day, and who had also, experienced a lot of loss in pets and stuff in that arena. And he said, he sent me like a poem or something, I forget. And it was about grief being your companion now and how she's come into your life. But at the end, when the person's asking, why are you here? Like, I don't want to feel you. And she says, I'm here because you love so much. If you didn't love, I couldn't be here. And I think that's a great, great point. And yeah, Lap of Love is our rec for today, that if you ever find yourself in this situation where you're just like, my pet is suffering, this is the most beautiful transition support I think that it was beyond our what we thought would even occur, and the thoughtfulness and the tenderness that they approached it. And they do they give you like a memorial book. You can get your paw print with them, as well as a lock of fur and other keepsakes they offer.
all kinds
but
of
in their
things.
memorial book, they do have a lot of recommended reading. So if you ever find yourself in this situation and use Lap of Love and get their memorial book, there's plenty of books in there to help you through this process. But I'm so happy. I woke up the next day after drained the day of, like, emotionally, physically, spiritually. I just felt so empty and dried out. But the next morning I woke up and the sun was shining, and I was starting to journal. Just, I don't even remember if it was about the whole situation, but just being thankful and just having this feeling of gratitude, as painful as it felt, of what you said, going back to that, of like, their suffering is now on us. A 7-pound cat was suffering so much, but 3 people now decided, we'll take your suffering for you. And where hers was only going to grow worse, our suffering and our grief will only heal over time.
It's energy. I mean, that's all. Well, that's a matter of opinion, I suppose. But she's energy.
Well, sure.
And we absorb that energy, and that energy continues to be in our life. So.
But just waking up and having the sun and the sun shining, and just I put on like a music that just immediately just boosted my mood. And I just felt this gratitude for, 1, I'm glad we have ended the suffering. And 2, just as sad and difficult as that day was, there is a new day. Today is a new day. And we had watched Chicken Little that night because we needed something lighthearted, funny. We forgot how freaking funny that movie was. Chicken Little is so good.
Our next recommendation for the day is Chicken Little.
Watch Chicken Little, the cartoon. But it just brought some levity that maybe we needed after a whole day of just being depleted. But that in there, he says, today is a new day. Today is a new day. Because, like, he doesn't want to do the same mistake as yesterday. And that's just what came up in my heart the next day. So as we're wrapping up here, really look at your own belief system around your relationship with pets, and what does that relationship look like? And is it archaic in the sense of like what you shared and what we shared with, like, oh, man is dominant and all things must bow to me, which I don't think anyone should hold that
No.
belief. Or is it that you do see yourself as like, this is a being that, deserves love, respect, and my patience and all of that, just like you as a human deserve, that we are on equal footing, that one is not better than the other. Life is life, and life is super important. And if you are, like I said, in a position that you have to consider this, please reach out to Lap of Love. You will not regret it at all. And you got any closing?
Like, subscribe, and comment.
Yeah, I mean, and if you feel like this is a great outlet to share your story with maybe the loss of your pet at some point and how it affected you and how you've evolved through it, we'd love to hear. So we will have Lap of Love, their link in the description. You can just click that, and until next time, be evolving, people.